What's up, all you crazy cats and kittens? It is Scott Jones, aka Skojo, finally returned to Instagram after a little hiatus. Working overseas, I was a little bit busy. I tried a number of things once I left the military. I guess I put all my eggs in one basket and applied for Big Brother. But unfortunately, I think they wanted someone a little bit more feminine. So I sent them details for some of the whistleblowers over the IG8F investigation. Nah, I promised a lot of people that I would not bring up the IG8F investigation in any of my social medias, because I'll probably get too angry and start punching holes in the drywall again, and mum will fucking kill me if I do that again. So I'm going to try and stick away from that and basically just talk about good times that I had in the military. And clearly by my Instagram, I fucking enjoyed it. So a lot of veterans get out of the military and I guess they just kill themselves or something. That's all you really read about. But, I don't know anyone that killed themselves. For the most part, all my friends are absolutely crushing it in the corporate world. And especially the ones with some pretty advanced skill sets. They're not limited to teaching Iraqis star jumps in some shithole country that they don't want to live in anyway. They're just kicking goals, consulting on major defense projects. So shout out to all the enablers, doing it big. And yeah, what else did I try and do? Well, let's try to start a company. Someone wrote something very nasty about it and that got shut down. What a damn shame. Then what did I try and do? I tried to get all the boys together on this little side project I had, which was called Dogfights. Inspired by true events in Afghanistan, I tried to get all the boys together, all the combat corps guys, and even a couple of pilots together. And we're all going to meet once a month, the first Sunday of every month in my garage. And on the projector screen, we're just going to watch footage from World War I and World War II and some of the more famous dogfights and aerial battles that happened over the skies of Europe. But obviously that was just a front for actual dogfights. So naturally it didn't get up. RSPCA got involved. Kind of a big deal. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do next? Maybe I'll make a return to Instagram. And, being a SIG, maybe I'll just fucking set up a microphone, because it's not that fucking hard to talk into one. So plenty of people hit me up in the last couple of years since I got out, and they want me to join in on their little ventures and endeavors. And I love podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts, especially about military stuff, because I love military history. And it's kind of weird to be now associated with a time where people kind of want to hear the shenanigans that I got up to. And there's plenty of podcasts out there about leadership and mental health, but, I find it hard to get through a lot of them without yawning, because I absolutely loved every moment I spent in the military. And while, 1% of the time, you're putting a dude in a body bag and it's pretty sad, 99% of the time, you can see by my photos, I was fucking killing it. So, why not just share some experiences with all you mad dogs? I know my target audience for this podcast isn't probably serving dudes, and those cunts you're not even meant to have fucking social media anyway, so I don't even know why you're following me, and some of you get a little bit upset, especially some former operators getting a little bit upset that I opened up my Instagram and potentially made the unit look a little bit loose. Well, what I can say is that the majority of the operators that I worked with are extremely professional dudes. Mad dogs, absolutely love, I would say 80% of them. And then obviously there's that 20% that are borderline retarded, that, I don't know how they got into the army, let alone special forces. Absolute fucking retards. However, what I can say about most of the dudes that I worked with is that, and this includes some of the dudes that are in a lot of trouble right now, they are absolute fucking legends, absolute fucking chads of dudes. And on numerous occasions, I can definitely say that the only reason that I'm still alive today is because mad dog fucking shooters stood over me, put their weapons in their shoulders, and protected me in times when I needed to bury my head in some technical equipment, and I had my head down and my asshole hanging out and puckering. And those senior dudes that had decades of deployments and operational experience behind them to protect me and keep me safe is definitely what brought me home. And I'll be forever grateful to those boys for what they did. And maybe we'll tell some of those stories at some point. But I guess a lot of people ask me, Skojo, what the fuck did you do in the military? And how did you have the opportunity to take so many fucking photos while you were banging it in? Well, what I can tell you is that almost every operator has a mad stash of war dog photos. And you generally only see those photos if that dude dies. So there's plenty of dudes that'll be like, hey, you shouldn't be sharing those photos, man. Well, you know what? I will fucking share those photos because I don't give a fuck what you say. I'm trying to inspire the next generation of warriors, and there's a lot of dudes out there that are reluctant to give advice on Afghan because they think that they're going to get, involved or implicated in some of the reporting that's going on in the media. Well, for most of us, we didn't do fucking anything wrong, so get fucked. I'm going to share some cool photos, and hopefully that inspires some dudes to join the military, or some dudes that are sitting in some shit battalion somewhere, sweeping the breezeway for the third time today. And maybe it inspires them to throw a selection app in. Obviously for 2 commando, fucking naturally. And maybe it inspires some of those support staff dudes to push themselves a bit harder and get themselves down to one of the special operations units so that they can bang it in and get those same experiences that we got. We're so fortunate at a time to join when dudes were banging it in left, right, and center. It shocks me when you see some individuals now in senior leadership positions without combat badges or even Afghan gongs. Because I guess in World War I and World War II, if the war was going on, which it certainly was raging across Europe and the Pacific, and you didn't join the military, you didn't sign up to join the military with all your friends, the older men in town would go around at night and put a white feather in your letterbox. And what that meant was, you're a fucking coward. And the equivalent of that these days is when you see a senior officer who has never been in a gunfight, never been in combat. And you can identify them quite easily by just looking at their chest. How the fuck have you done 25 years in the military and never been in a gunfight? And you're in a combat corps? There's clearly something wrong there. So, another thing I don't want to do, which I see a lot on Instagram, is just constant dudes just throwing spears at each other. And I'm talking about veterans, and it probably won't come out in the Royal Commission that the biggest threat to our veterans is actually just other veterans being cunts to each other and trying to silence each other and shut each other down on Instagram. Because that's pretty much all I'm seeing right now. You rarely see 2 operators giving praise to each other. You just see operators acting like fucking schoolgirls. So it's kind of embarrassing. Get your fucking shit together, boys. The closest thing that most operators are going to come to in their careers from basically 2013 onwards is stabbing each other in the back. So, if there was a gong for, stabbing your mate in the back and lying to an investigation to keep yourself out of trouble, I'm sure there'd be a few more VCs floating around the traps, but unfortunately not. All they did was just kick out a whole bunch of fucking warriors that had hundreds of years worth of experience between them. And it fucking sucks, man. It saddens me. It reminds me of when I was in high school, we had a gun footy team. And I'm talking about some coconuts that could absolutely fold you in half like a fucking Audi deck chair. And these motherfuckers were crushing it in our district or our zone, in our state competitions. And then unfortunately, some spastic teacher that was on, I don't know, I'm guessing $50,000 a year, yawn, was able to inject to the PE teachers and say, well, if they don't pass their grades, they can't play. So all the big units in the team, naturally all those big bad boy Samoans and Tongan boys that we had that looked about fucking 35 when they were 17, all got removed from the team because they couldn't match the grades. So we ended up with a team full of white dudes and Asian kids, and we got absolutely flogged every fucking week. And now that's kind of how I look at the SAS. You've removed 19 of your best fucking players, and you're left with a lot of fucking spanners, a lot of cowards, and I'd say not 90% of the dudes of that unit have never fired a shot in anger, and it's a damn fucking shame, because now that I'm a civilian and I'm working and traveling in some real shitholes, I want to know in the back of my mind that if I get taken hostage and I'm sitting in a fucking orange jumpsuit about to get my head chopped off, although, if they put it on a stake and it was, on the news, I dare say, I'd be looking pretty good. My mullet would be pretty airy with no neck in the way to sort of block the breeze. But if that was to take place and I was in that position, I want some violent motherfuckers to come and get me out. And it's kind of interesting that the most violent, experienced soldiers are the ones that are getting booted, and all the fucking cowards that sat back and watched other teams do all the work on jobs, but still shared in on the battle honors and the unit citations, are able to keep serving. So, fuck, man, I gotta stop talking about it. God damn it. I promised some people that I wouldn't talk about this stuff, and here I am fucking gobbing off like a fuckwit. Man. Well, most people that slide into my DMs, they ask me a lot of questions about why I chose Sydney over Perth. And I guess my initial response is, I wasn't selected. When I did selection, I basically gave these motherfuckers an opportunity to allow me to use my skills with that unit. So originally, I think like most dudes at 2 Commando, I wanted to go to the SAS because all you ever read and see on TV and in the media and in books growing up was how amazing the SAS is, and that they're apparently a tier 1 organization. And then I guess the more time that I spent at Kapuka very early on, I started to realize that my personality fitted better with the boys in Sydney. So I think by Kapuka, I'd probably already bashed my Sandy Beret, just basically getting ready for it. Naturally, was not in doubt of crushing an SAS selection course like I fucking crush a bunch of VB tinnies every night. But I decided at that point in time that once I learned about their lines of operation of 2 Commando and FE Bravo in Afghanistan, I definitely felt that I was more in line with the views of the hammer and not the scalpel, because, I grew up playing footy and hanging out with the boys, and all I really want to do is hang out with a massive group of dudes, #NoHomo, and just absolutely run amok on the enemy. I don't want to go into a village and take photos and dress as a local and pretend to grow my beard and wear a shitty little Afghan hat. That didn't excite me. What excited me was being a part of a team that struck fear into the heart of every fucking cunt in that valley, and it made me so happy to be a part of an FE Bravo assault force rolling into a village and just seeing the chaos unfold all around me. I was like a fucking kid in a candy store, to be honest. So I could see that happening, and when I spoke to my only friend that had ever joined the army from high school was a direct entry commando he joined, I think, at 17. So at 19, he's a qualified commando banging it in Afghanistan. And that's the only dude I ever knew. So when I saw his deployment footage and his photos when I'm still a civilian, naturally, I had a pretty warped view on the military. So when I got to Kapuka as a grunt, as a rifleman, and after a few weeks, I started to look around at all the retards. Unfortunately, I thought to myself, what the fuck, bro? This isn't what I saw in the recruitment ad from my fucking friend that showed me some fucking SOTG early rotation footage. That is definitely not what I signed up for. This fucking sucks. So I called him when we got our phones back after about 2 weeks, and you're on red tabs, standing at attention looking at a fucking tree. And I said, bro, what job do you actually do? And he said, I'm a direct entry commando, and I'm in a mortar team, and I'm about to go on my second tour to Afghanistan. And I said, well, motherfucker, how do I get to commando? And he said, well, you got to do selection, but first you got to spend 18 months in some shitty battalion. So he advised me to switch over to a job or a trade that's actually wanted within the unit, so that I'm being pulled towards the unit in terms of a posting, and I don't have to solely rely on passing selection, which obviously was never in doubt. So I chucked my core transfer in, and I said, hey man, well, who goes out with you on missions? Who goes and bangs it in with you that you would not want to be out there without? And he said, well, one, there's medics. And those guys are fucking weapons. And they can get out of the military and become, a paramedic or a nurse. And I thought, well, nurse sounds kind of gay. No homo. Hashtag good on you. First responders, love yous. But didn't sound like it was for me. So I said, well, who else? And he said, we've got these SIGs. Some of them are kind of nerds, but a lot of them are fucking the lads. And they got these dudes called bears who just basically carry around heavy shit, manage an interpreter, and they find and locate where the enemy is so that we can kill them. And I thought, well, killing people sounds pretty fucking awesome. So I put my core transfer in to become a bear, and it took me a couple of months. I think I was at the end of Singo doing my, I think it was like an urban sort of hybrid phase, and I was about to go to 8-9 RAR with everyone that I joined up with. And some sergeant came out and said, hey dude, your core transfer came in and you're going off to become a bear and you're studying Indonesian next week. And he looked at me like, why the fuck would you want to do that? And I looked at him like, bruh, you're like 45 years old and you've never deployed because you chose a shit job. So maybe you should, pull your field mirror out and have a good hard look at yourself. So anyways, I went and became a bear and naturally passed that. I think it's the hardest technical trade in the military. Someone can probably call me on that one, but I mean, the top 5%, some of us like to call it. I think we had 3 people pass out of 30 on my IET course alone, which was 2.5 years. And then I was doing a consolidation phase once I passed the IETs. And I'm down in then it's called the Defense Signals Directorate in Canberra. So I worked in an office, literally a cubicle. I didn't see the sun. I'm in a basement with no windows, and I fucking hated it. And I'm looking up on the TV screen, and it's like, oh, cool, another Australian soldier's just been killed in Afghanistan. And I'm sitting on some boring fucking task in a strategic posting with a bunch of losers that, essentially were hiding from the war. And I went and spoke to my career manager, and they said there's no chance of me posting out of there anytime soon. I asked to go to the SAS. The SAS were pretty keen to take me, but they were hamstrung by the fact that I had to stay there for 3 years. And if I was going to stay there for 3 years, I was probably going to miss the war because shit was starting to wrap up. And this is around 2010. So I just threw in an app for selection. I didn't tell anyone. No one in my chain of command, being a tri-service/civilian organization, had ever seen a selection application before. So I'd been out of IETs for 3 weeks. I'd never been field. I'd never been on a field exercise. I worked in an office. And the only time I'd been field was Kapuka. So I sat there when I was meant to be working, reading the Junior Woodchuck. And every CSM is just probably starting to jack off in his chair, because that is how I learned to be a soldier, by reading a fucking document from Vietnam. So there you fucking go. That's how I learned to navigate. I asked the classified mapping team at the Defense Signals Directorate to print out a map of Mount Majura and the mountains around Canberra. And I went out there, got an issued compass, and just learned how to navigate by reading the woodchuck. There was no one there to teach me shit. I just did it myself. And I didn't tell anyone that I was training for selection. That's probably one of my pet hates, is when some cunt tells me they're going for selection. If you need selection advice, here's my advice to you. You're going to fail selection. Don't fucking tell anyone. Just bang it in. It's pretty simple. It's just 3 weeks of fucking PT if you do the SAS one anyway. If you do the 2 Commando one, back when I did it, it was 6 weeks. Naturally, twice as hard as the SAS one. But, it's just fucking a couple of weeks of PT. If you fail it, you're a fucking weak cunt. If you fail it, there's a good reason why you probably failed it. So I became a commando and, I passed selection, and halfway through, or about 3/4 of the way through the reinforcement cycle, I had a massive blowout because, I probably never told anyone until this point, but, I grew up just around the corner from the Holsworthy base. So when all the dudes on my Rio were noshing each other off at Northies or in Coogee during our Rio and having a good time, I was hanging out with my civilian mates. Shit was getting pretty loose, and I was probably starting to slack off a little bit on the Rio because I knew that as a bear, I was wanted at the unit, and multiple DS were pulling me aside and telling me that, and that probably changed my mentality to a pretty negative thing. So I was ramping it. I was fucking going out on a Tuesday, Wednesday night and ramping the guts out of it at Candies in the Cross, just smashing teapots at World Bar, and then backing up for like a CQB course. So my drill started to slip, and I didn't have that foundation of knowledge that the grunts had to fall back on when they were having a shit day. And I never got a safety throughout my whole selection or Rio. I never ever got written up for anything unsafe. However, I just started to pay shit off, and it was becoming apparent that I didn't have that skill set to fall back on when I was having a rough day. So they let me finish the course, and they said, we want you to do the course, this one course that I had left to do, which was Commando Urban Operations. I had to come back the next year and do it. So no dramas. I just got posted into the unit anyway. Fucking no big deal. I went straight onto the tactical assault group and was running and gunning with the boys for a good couple of months. Then that course came back around, passed it, and I finished my Rio course on the Friday, and I deployed to Afghanistan on an SOTG on the Tuesday. So rotation 20. And some people call that rotation a fucking, I think they refer to it as the pack-up deployment, because we're packing up the base. Now, in my mind, you can call it what you want, but that's just because your deployment, you were supporting some shitty school or some crappy bridge that was being built for some, Afghan village that didn't really give a fuck and never ever used it. So what I would say to that is that every rotation up until Rot 20 was a complete fucking waste of time. And the only thing that we really did was we get to zero our weapons into a few human beings, which is amazing. 2 Commando forged its reputation in fire, and a unit was built out of basically thin air during Afghanistan and absolutely fucking crushed it, and is now, one of the most reputable soft units in the world. And, the SAS got into some fucking amazing stoushes and absolutely fucking crushed it. Killed a whole bunch of cunts that gunned down, some of my former colleagues in cold blood while they were playing cards. And, you could call it targeting missions, what they were doing, or kill capture missions. But at the end of the day, that's just a fancy word for revenge. So, when they talk about revenge killings, yeah, fucking oath they were. And whoever they killed fucking deserved it. And I shouldn't be talking about that. Anyway, moving on. So there I am in Afghanistan. And I know cunts probably want to hear stories about cunts getting fucking whacked and shot in the head. But, the first story that comes to my mind from Afghanistan, among many that I'm sure I'll be able to talk about on this podcast, is the fact that, well, I'd come off Rio and I'd gone on to the tactical assault group. And while I was there, I went to the Q store. And if you can imagine, this fucking Q store at 2 Commando was a massive warehouse just full of cool shit. And the two old geezers that work at the front, they've been there, I think, since the beginning of time. And they basically issued Jesus his robe when he got nailed to the cross. So these cats knew everything, and they've been holding on to everything for years. And they were cool dudes, and they let me into the Q store. And, you know, essentially, you got very different treatment if you just walked in and said, I'm a SIG posted to 126. Or if you slapped your Green Beret on the desk. It was basically like flopping your dick out and saying, yes, this is my dick and I have a very big dick and you will worship this dick and give me whatever the fuck I want. So naturally, when you went in the Q store, you made sure your beret came with you. That's all I'm saying on that. Basically like a VIP pass getting into the fucking Ivy or something, you know what I mean? It's basically like being on the guest list to the Ivy. It's basically like giving the bouncer a shake at the Ivy with a bag of Coke in your hand. That's kind of what it's like walking around with a green bezza. So, they let me in the Q store, and I was seeing things and dudes' names on things. I'm fairly sure, like, I'm pretty sure Cam Baird's bush hat was in there. So I was like, fucking goddamn. And then I'm pretty sure Greg Schur's Jewish DPDU skull cap. And a couple other artifacts that, you know, I hope got sent to the War Memorial. And then I looked up on this shelf, and at this point in time, I've still just got that standard Kapuka issued shit. And I bought some stuff for selection, but really, I needed some good kit for Afghan, knowing that I was going over on the next trip. And I looked up on this shelf, and like a little angel, I think there was maybe just a light behind it, but it kind of looked like a halo around this little green snug pack softy elite sleeping bag. And I almost shit my pants, because imagine being a young dumb lid and being able to ask, can I be issued that SF sleeping bag? And this old geezer said, of course you can, mate. I didn't even know that was up there, so it's all yours. So I get this sleeping bag and a couple of little bits and pieces, and I signed that bitch out, and I was so happy. Because all I had was that Kapuka issued winter weight or a summer weight. And I didn't want to look like, when I got to Afghan, that the only thing I'd done was Kapuka. People are going to find out that, I was kind of a massive fucking lid. So I didn't tell anyone my background. I just kind of acted like, yeah, well, back when I was a bear, I did heaps of shit and heaps of exercises. Yeah, I've been Afghan before. It's not a big deal. Just send me on this SOTG. It'll be fine. So I signed it out, I chucked it in my e-bag, and I found myself going on a job in a little village called Patan. And this little shithole called Patan is about 40 minutes from TK. And to this point in time, it had been summer. So I deployed in summertime, and it was hot as balls. My balls were so fucking sweaty. But, you know, because I was so excited about what I was doing there, I think you'll see in a lot of my photos that I'm wearing a dump pouch. And these days, you'll see in your combat shooting course, you get taught to wear your dump pouch on your non-master side, so you can flick those magazines back there, maybe a couple Mars bars, you know what I mean? But back then, what all the cool kids were doing was wearing their dump pouch at the front. And I had to wear my dump pouch at the front because, you know, I had a boner basically every time we went wheels up in TK, until the moment we came back and landed. And, you know, instead of going the post-stop hot wash, I'd probably just, you know, duck on down the Portaloos and rub one out, because I had a battle fat. And that dump pouch, you know, it basically saved my life. It was kind of like, you know, when you're in high school and you're fucking sitting on the bus and you just get a random boner. And I remember one time I caught that bus for probably about an extra half an hour, just because I didn't want to stand up, because I had that, you know, that teenage coaster bus boner. And these are the things that you do, you know. You don't want to fucking let anyone know what's going on down in your pants when you're that age. And, you know, when I was in Afghan, running around with those boys, watching them knock people's fucking melons off at 200 meters, and I was so impressed that, yeah, I just ran that dump pouch so that, no one could see my battle fat. But now I'm proud of it, you know. It was fucking a happy time. So anyways, we're going to Patan, and it's winter time, so I'm still running all the same rigs that I've been running the whole time, but the only different things that I was packing in my heavy as fuck backpack was a motherfucking sleeping bag, some cold weather kit because it was snowing, and we could see from the order slides and the recce's that we were doing on the mapping programs that we use that there were snow-capped mountains where I was with a sniper team where we were going to insert. So we're going to insert and basically walk all night about 20 Ks. And when we got into location, we were going to lay up for a couple of hours before first light. And then the boys were going to roll in and just start whacking the whole village of Taliban when they hit the deck. And hopefully the snipers that I was with was going to assist them with some long-range touching. Some basically long-range rape. Basically raping people's skulls with .338 rounds. Basically kind of, creating third vaginas in Taliban abdomens with high-powered rifles. So it was pretty cool to be a part of it. But naturally, it was very fucking cold. So we get into the location, I think it's about 2 or 3 in the morning once we finally got there. And you're covered in sweat and you're cooling down real quick because you're wet and it's snowy. And it was fucking cold. But I knew I had that little cheeky, softy sleeping bag back in the bottom of my pack. Oh, bottom? Yeah, the bottom. Yeah, because you pack fucking heavy at the top, right? I'm already forgetting. So I pulled out that sleeping bag and everyone looked at me like, damn, son, you got that softy. And I felt like a bit of a big dick player in the OP. Naturally, I wasn't going to do any pickets because, I'm just a dumb dig. I'm just a dumb sig. I don't fucking do that shit. I'll let you shooters do it because you guys are fucking killing it so much that maybe you can kill it on my picket as well. So me and the Terp went and had a little cheeky nap, and when I pulled out my sleeping bag, I said, don't worry, bro. I got this sleeping bag. We're going to be nice and warm. Maybe you can even cuddle into me, jack me off or something. But when I pulled out that motherfucking sleeping bag, it turned out to be some motherfucker's puff pants. Now, what puff pants are a set of basically pants that you would wear maybe in the 90s to the snow. And they were warm as fuck, but they looked really kind of lame. They're the kind of pants that maybe only an officer, maybe in the Navy, deployed to Kabul in, the early stages of the war, that's never actually going to see any combat, but kind of wants to gradually use every single bit of kit that they've been issued, even though it's not really practical, he's going to wear it. They're the kind of pants that they were. So no one really wore them. They weren't cool. The jackets definitely got run pretty hard. I think I've still got one. But the pants, nah, bruh. Nah. No one ran that shit. Maybe the Chocos or, some fucking loser in a headquarters element. But when I pulled the fucking sleeping bag out and it turned out to be a pair of fucking puff pants, I was shattered. And everyone fucking laughed at me. And they said, you got fucking done, bruh. And I realized instantly the only reason that was in the fucking Q store was because some motherfucker had shoved his puff pants in his issued SF sleeping bag cover and returned it. And for him, he's probably still got that sleeping bag. He's probably still laughing and saying, some dumb fuckwit signed out my fucking puff pants and I got away with his sleeping bag. But old Skojo just sitting on that fucking feature, and it was definitely in the minus temperatures, and all I had was a pair of fucking puff pants. And, I was just lucky that the hate kept me warm and the desire to want that sun to come up so I could just watch, have a front row seat to the fucking bloodbath that was about to occur. It kind of got me through the night, and, luckily one of the partner force dudes that I was with, old Bugsy, old Gul Muhammad, he went down to a nearby compound and commandeered me a little rug to keep me warm, keep me from not dying. And when I say commandeered, I'm pretty sure he fucked someone up for that rug. I'm pretty sure he persuaded them with, the barrel of his AK-47. I'm pretty sure he persuaded them with his fist and maybe a little bit of his forehead, maybe the antenna of his ICOM radio on that dude's calf muscles. That's all I'm saying about that. But it kept me warm and it kept me in the fight. And I dare say, although I've been shot at a fuckload, I've been proper IDF'd, I've been in a pretty strange little helicopter crash, which we'll talk about some other time. All sorts of fucking madness where I almost died. But in my mind, that's probably the closest I've come to death, because it was fucking cold. And there was absolutely no way that I was going to ask one of the other boys to keep me warm or to let them know that I'd fucked up. But when the sun came up and all I had was those fucking puff pants and a good attitude, on the tag, I saw the name of the dude that had labeled his puff pants, and I will forever remember the name. Whoever the fuck is Mick Davo, I want to give your dog chocolate. I want to basically Rochambeau you as hard as I possibly can. I basically want to hire out some steel cap boots from a mine site and kick you right in the fucking gooch, because that fucking sucked. But at the same time, touche, you got away with it, you fucking dirty dog. And yeah, that's the story of the time I almost died in Patan. And maybe we'll have some more stories about Patan, because we definitely killed about fucking a handful of dudes that day. And some of the stories from that day are some of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. But that's all for me today, and we look forward to episode 2. I'm going to go head off now and turn some lesbians straight. And I don't know where you guys live, but fucking rural New South Wales, we have got a massive rat infestation. There's more fucking rats here than there is in probably Brereton's contact list. So I'm going to head off and enjoy yourselves. Stay out of trouble. Hooroo. Ta-da. Catch you later.